Welcome to our latest exhibition receiving orders, for which this is the catalogue. Let's have a little bit of a walk around and show you a few of the highlights of the exhibition. This is a very good early 19th century campaign bookcase. We don't see that many which are threefold. This one stands out for it, but also it's got lovely wide brass banding to the back. Very nice piece and quite good quality. This is another interesting piece. This is a miniature table by John Furlong, who was a cabinet maker in Woolwich in East London. And as you can see, the legs are removable. The question is, was it just made as a very low table? Certainly it could be used as a coffee table now, or was it a salesman's sample? In the exhibition we've got quite a few pieces of Chinese export furniture, and we make a point of discussing them and giving an insight into the China trade. These are 3 Camperwood Trunks. The smallest one at the top has got a nice label for a Canton maker inside the lid. But these two stand out for being a pair. It's not often that we find a pair, and of course from a decorating point of view, to have a pair of trunks like this are fantastic to go at the end of a bed or to have 2 coffee tables. They've also got a wonderful oversized blank brass engraving plate to the top. 2 beds in the exhibition. Now this one is unnamed, this brass bed, but it's highly likely it was made by Thompson of Longacre, who was very well known for making his campaign beds. Super quality, very nice piece. And the second one, which has got great provenance, it belonged to Prime Minister Gladstone's nephew, J.R. Gladstone, who was in the Coldstream Guards, and he fought in the Egyptian campaign of 1882. But what's also interesting about it is the maker's name is on the Hessian, and that's Hill and Millard. So lovely to know who made it. We don't often get that sort of information with beds. Another piece of Chinese export furniture, a jack-in-the-box roll-top desk. This is a very good English campaign cabinet. Now if you go to the item stock page on our website, you'll see it's got its own video, but this whole section is removable, and behind it we've got some secret drawers, but really nicely made, wonderful quality. The stand is later, it's probably around about 1900 in date, but still it works very well on it from a practical point of view and has been very well made. Another piece of Chinese export furniture here, a one-piece campaign chest, lovely decorative handles, and when we see a handle like that we automatically think that's probably Chinese export. We have seen them on English pieces of furniture and boxes, but mostly we associate them with Chinese export. I'll just come around the other side and show you. It's a secretaire chest, so let's just pop that open. So there you go. Quite practical as well for working at if you wanted to. Rosewood top, Asian hardwood to the drawer fronts. What a great colour this box is. I mean, look at that green. Early 19th century document box, lovely printed paper inside, and we've got the maker's label there, Seabrook. So that's also a very nice thing. Leather on softwood, so quite light in weight. Now, this is one of my favourite things in the exhibition. We've been talking about the China trade, and this piece really gives us a wonderful insight into the history of the China trade. It belongs to Captain Richard Alsager, and he made several trips for the East India Company to India, taking goods to sell, then buying cotton and going on to China. And as part of his wage, he was allowed 56 tons of cargo on board the ship in both directions. So he probably traded off his own back as well, but he also bought furniture for his home and also for use in his cabin. And this top section, this cabinet, I think there's a good chance he bought it to use in his cabin. And then when he retired from the East India Company and became an MP in Surrey, he had this stand made for it just to stand nicely in his home. But it's well worth looking at this on our website, because we managed to find out an awful lot of history about our Sega, and it's quite an interesting read. So onto a good old English chest, and again this piece has got its own video on our website that you can look at, but made by J.W. Allen, name stamped to the locks, but also a number of the attributes are easily recognisable as Allen. Very good maker. In the exhibition we've also got 3 pairs of pressed metal Brighton buns, and it's quite interesting to compare them. Again, they've got their own video, but we've got brass here, we've got nickel plate in the middle, and we've got hallmarked silver on the end here. So 3 nice sets. Now this is a super quality thing. This is a carved Kokila Nut, and just look at the quality of the carving there. There's a good chance that this was made by a French prisoner of war and sold. At some stage it's probably had a little bit of damage, and that we can see the quarter deck here has probably been replaced at a later date. The carving not quite as good as the rest of it, but you know, it's a historic repair, and it is what it is. But just the quality of all of this work, I mean, look at that scallop shell underneath Neptune. Fantastic. Originally it probably would have had a little metal stand just to hold it, and you'd keep your snuff in there. Interesting case barometer and compass by Lenny of Edinburgh. Good maker, and a nice bit of travel equipment. Now we've had a number of leather kit bags in the past. This one's a cracking size, but what really makes it stand out, and it's the only one that we've seen, are these brass rings. And they tell us that they were made so you could hang them on a beast of burden. So truly a piece for travel. And very interesting for that, quite rare to see that. Another trunk. This one belonged to William Atherton of Everton up in Liverpool, and he was a merchant trading between South America, Peru and Liverpool. But again, from a decoration point of view, great size for use behind a sofa or the end of a bed. Now we've had Platt's Cavalry boot racks before, but have got serrated edges so that you can hang your shoes and your boots by the heels. This is a different version of it, and it's a Cavalry boot rack, and you'd hang your pairs of boots upside down between these wooden pegs. First one of those that we've ever had as well, quite interesting. Now within this catalogue, this exhibition, we've been very lucky to find 3 pieces of campaign furniture that all work on the same principle. And it's a very practical, simple principle that a number of makers used. And that's simply having a number of tiers or shelves which are separated by brass columns which screw in together. So you can make a washstand, and a number of London makers sold these, manufactured and sold these. But you could also make shelves, and we've had a number of sets of these shelves in the past. But this is only the second one that we've had, which is 4 tiers, and it's actually much earlier in date. Whereas most of this furniture is mid to late 19th century, these shelves are early 19th century. And you might be able to see the mahogany. It's wonderful fiddle mahogany. I mean, look at the stripes on that. It's also got a hinged cresting rail. So when these brass standards are unscrewed and removed, this just simply falls back against the top shelf, makes it much easier for storage. Early 19th century in date, but a very interesting variant. This piece also falls into the category. And again, it's another unusual piece. We've heard of whatnots made like the washstands before. We've seen a number of oval ones, but the top shelf has always been replaced later by somebody else who found it, perhaps it might be more practical rather than having a cutout for a wash bowl. This one is all completely original. It's a great size, much wider, and probably very, very practical to give you extra storage in your tent. Very interesting piece. So we're very, very pleased to find that. Now, this is another washstand. Works to the same principle in that the legs, the columns unscrew and then the shelves separate. One or two different makers that we know of did make wooden washstands like this with wooden standards rather than brass ones. Ross is the first name that comes to mind. This isn't by Ross. The quality of the design is quite different to those by Ross. J.W. Allen, we know in their early catalogues, also made them. This one, the maker is anonymous, but the quality is good. And what's also interesting is that it's only made with 3 legs, 3 standards, rather than 4. But still very stable for it, very practical, good chunky turnings and good thick boards. So that's another interesting piece. Now, this telescope set was everything that an army officer would need at the turn of 1900, and it's quite rare to get a set like this. We've got a very good telescope. We've got a tripod by Watson, dated 1903. Most of these items, but not all of them, are dated and they're all 1903. You don't find a telescope with its original tripod very often. You've also got a pocket sextant by Stanley with its case, and a prismatic compass by Elliott Brothers. And all of this set fits very neatly and compactly into this japanned tin. Quite unusual to get a complete set like that, and as I said before, very practical for an army officer at the turn of 1900 to have such kit. Well, back to the China trade. We've gone past this 3-piece campaign chest without mentioning it. Again, it's an interesting piece. Great from a practical point of view to have the cupboard to the top. Interesting, it's inlaid with ebony, but on these cut out corners, where of course the ebony is quite fragile, it's more likely to get damaged, they've offset it with horn instead. So that's quite an interesting little touch. Again, these handles, typical China trade, but one of the things that jump out to us about pieces made in the Chinese ports, and the whole made of camphor. Now, these 3 boxes are made of amboina, and they're exceptional in the quality of the wood and their decorative look. I mean, the amboina offset against this brass, especially on this dressing case box in the middle where the amboina is a little bit darker, is just wonderful. I mean, what a cracking look. And at the bottom we've got a writing slope. So 3 Chinese export boxes, quite interesting. Now our catalogue cover is taken from this William Heath picture of a Grand Shaft barracks in Dover. Wonderful painting, came from the Jack Webb collection. Very, very interesting, but just a lovely, lovely scene. We've got a Duro chair here, but it's not your normal Duro chair. Again, a little bit different. If you look at the arms, normally you'd expect the arms just to be a strap of leather like the end. This one, it's got part wooden arms. Again, adjustable so you can recline it on these hooks with different holes to the strap. But also, the back is painted faux rosewood. Quite an interesting touch. With a chair like this, of course, it's very useful to have a coffee table. This is in the form of a coaching table, but much lower. What could be better than one coffee table? Well, a pair of coffee tables. What could be better than a pair of coffee tables? A pair of coffee tables with an interesting maker's name. And as you can see, they're stamped Liberty & Co. We've got a number of items in the catalogue with a cracking provenance to. This packing case chest belonged to George Hubbard, who was in the 8th Hussars, and we've got his engraved nameplate to the top. It's quite an interesting design. The carcass or packing case is made of oak. The drawer fronts, the Sherwood mahogany, very nice skeletal handles, still with some of their gilt lacquer to them. And originally, this packing case chest would have had slides which would drop down in there during travel, just to protect. And you've got a keyhole to the top here and a lock, and you would lock those in place. What we can also see from the top, from these fittings here, is that originally it probably had a shelving superstructure which would have just fitted on top. Unfortunately, long since gone along with the boards. But George Hubbard, quite an interesting Irish soldier. Again, you can read more about him on our website. We've got a few different sets of scales. Nice early set. This is a Georgian set, late 18th century, made by Pickett of Marlborough, and the hole just folds down into the box. The box underneath is very interesting, a fairly standard design of balance scales, but look at the stamp to the top, a fouled anchor with a broad arrow mark. So we know that they were used by the Navy. And the third set is a mahogany case set of diamond scales. What they're sat on is also worthy of a little bit more attention. It looks like a cabin table. We've got pembroke leaves to the side which will extend the top. We'll open the cupboard and we can see it's got drawers. The gallery to the top suggests it was made for use on board ship, but within the drawers there are a number of watermarks which tell us they probably contained apothecary bottles, and there's a very good chance that this belonged to the ship's surgeon. There's a video just on this item on its stock page, so go and have a look at that. That's quite interesting. Another collection of items in the catalogue, the Royal Navy and rum. Now, a number of you may have seen rum measures, or grog measures to be correct, in the past, and these came in a variety of different sizes. You can see this is a gill, and here we've got a half gallon, nice broad arrow mark stamped to it. But they weren't the only equipment used in the very serious business of measuring out and diluting the rum into grog to issue to the sailors on a daily basis. We've got some more equipment which was used. This is a rum pump, which you would use to take the rum out of a barrel, to pull it in, put it into a bellicoe. You've got a funnel here, very distinctive shape to allow it to freestand without you having to hold it when using it. And we've got a lipped measure, which is more accurate than one of these for measuring out the rum to be diluted with the water. And again, that says pint on it, so we know the size of it. So an interesting collection of Royal Navy items to do with rum. Now, this is a really good looking barrel, and it was also used on board ship. This would have been for containing food, but I mean, look at the quality of these brass hinges and this hasp block. Really good looking thing. And the barrel lifts off this stand as well, and that would have probably contained food on board ship. Now, it's not often that we get campaign furniture or travel furniture which is not British or British colonial. This is a Swedish chair, completely dismantled, numbered 16 underneath. Now, was it made to dismantle as a child's portable chair or campaign chair? Or was it made as a salesman's sample? And that's why it dismantled, so it was easier for him to carry around. The paint finish is nicely worn. You can see a lot of crackler to the finish up there, but actually, you know, I think that's really good looking. It gives it an awful lot of character. So back to items with provenance. And we've got 3 cracking pieces to talk to you about. We'll start with this trunk. This trunk is a Anglo-Indian trunk, very good looking. These raised brass straps, very decorative with the shaped ends. Lovely chunky carry handles to the sides. These straps go all the way underneath, so they really make it quite nice and strong, this trunk. Good bracket foot. But look at the nameplate to the top. Lieutenant Colonel Alex Caldwell, Artillery. Now, Alexander Caldwell was in charge of the artillery at Seringapatam that saw the British finally defeat Tipu Sultan, the Tiger of Mysore. So, very interesting for its history. We don't know if he had this trunk at Seringapatam or he got it later. The engraving of his rank is slightly different to his name, so it's possible he just had his name on, and then when he became a lieutenant colonel, he had the rank engraved by somebody else. We'll never know. We've got to date it to his rank, really, which is later than Seringapatam. But really interesting piece of furniture, but also very, very practical. On to one of the stars of the show. And we think this is very important in the history of campaign furniture. It's the earliest datable campaign chest of a classical form that we know of. And by that, I mean a campaign chest which has got regular size without any overhanging moulding, brass bound, 2 pieces, removable feet, flush handles. Yes, we've had earlier chests, but they've been more domestic in look, or they've been stepping stones until they finally reached this design. We date this chest to between May 1822 and June 1825. How do we do that? Well, the owner had his name, Lieutenant Colonel Garnham, engraved to these wonderful carry handles to the side. And having researched Garnham, we know that he took part in the invasion of Java. He became an aide-de-camp to Stamford Raffles. Raffles made him a resident of a number of cities and provinces in the area, and he became a good friend of Raffles. He came back to England on sick leave in May 1822. Whilst back in England, he was promoted to Lieutenant Colonel, the rank engraved to the nameplate, and then he went back to India June 1825. It's an English chest, so we know he bought it in England, and he must have bought it at that period to take back to India with it. But it's the earliest datable campaign chest of a classical form that we know. So those are two very interesting pieces to do with the early history of the British in India and how they took control. This is a third one, and it, again, early 19th century. It's got an engraved nameplate for Lieutenant Colonel Gummer to the top, and Stephenstone Gummer was an officer in the Madras Infantry. Now, we've had a number of Anglo-Indian trunks which are of this sort of form, but we can tell from the construction of it, the quality of the brassware, the handles used to the side, that it's much earlier in date. And Gummer's rank of Lieutenant Colonel bears that out. So go and have a look at that on the website as well. He was also an interesting man in the history of the British in India in the early 19th century. One final thing to talk to you about before we go is another rare survivor of travel equipment. This is an early to mid 18th century paper lantern. Now we know Florence Nightingale, much later, 100 years later, is thought to have used a Turkish paper lantern, the Lady of the Lamp in the Crimea. This is much earlier, and of course by its nature, being paper, most of them didn't survive. So a rare survivor, and a very interesting piece. Those of you who follow us know that we love our campaign lighting, and this is certainly an unusual and very interesting piece in that category. So that's a quick whiz around of the exhibition receiving orders. As I've said a couple of times, if you go and look at the items on our website and also go to our YouTube channel, in the coming weeks you'll see a number of individual videos of items where we delve a little bit deeper into their history and information available. Thank you for watching.